All right, everyone, we're going to get started here in just a second talking about all this heat. I am Michigan based, but we might cover a couple other areas. So I know a lot of people ask about different states, but we're probably just going to keep it a little focused on Michigan. I'm just going to make sure everything is sharing and working the way I want it. So hopefully we don't run into many issues again. And it looks like we are live and good to go here for a sec. Turn down my fan a little bit so it's not too loud for anyone. Okay, so first question that's popping up is the air quality alerts, and that is because it's going to be hot. We're going to have air that's just allowing a lot more pollution to accumulate down at the surface, a lot more ozone levels, so that's why that's going to happen. That does happen a lot in the summertime when it's very, very hot outside. You can trap a lot of those pollutants down near the surface. So let's get rid of some of this stuff up here. I'm very much still kind of in the learning process here of all this, you guys, so please bear with me just a little bit while we are going through this. Looks like TikTok's live. I can't see a preview of TikTok, so hopefully you're seeing what I'm seeing. And I gotta get the I gotta go live in two places, which is, a little annoying sometimes, but we will do what we can here. Make sure I got this going. There we go. Okay. So this is basically the model, what we call real-time analysis, and it's showing basically current temperatures outside. It's that simple. So we'll keep that in mind here. I'm going to start with that. We'll start looking at the humidity that's coming in. We have 5 days, maybe more, of very intense heat across Michigan. So this isn't something that's like, oh, we're having a hot day, maybe 2 hot days. We're having 5 or 6 extremely hot days and very little relief during the overnights. And that puts a lot of stress on the human body, especially vulnerable populations. We're talking pregnant women, we're kids, elderly, then, of course, socioeconomic issues with folks that don't have access to air conditioning and things like that. So a lot of stuff to keep in mind here as the heat really starts to build in, and hopefully, we can get through it without having too many issues. One thing I do want to point out is heat is the #1 weather-related killer, and it's by a long shot. A heat wave can kill hundreds, if not thousands of people. Again, typically happens in more vulnerable populations, but we have had several instances, even in the United States, where we've had a lot of heat-related deaths because of just prolonged heat and stuff like that. So starting off, again, pretty warm out here now, but I do just kind of want to dive right into some of the hazards that we have going on, just so I can show everybody what we're dealing with here. So on a regional scale, this is pivotal weather, and it shows a lot of what's going on. It does actually include from Michigan to Omaha, so that's super convenient. Anything in the dark red is an excessive heat watch, and that is going from Monday, tomorrow, all the way through Friday. And then, of course, depending on how the weekend looks, we may stay hot through Sunday without getting any relief until Monday, as some of the models are hinting now. But I do want to let you know that that can even change, because we're talking, 5 to 7 days out. The models 5 to 7 days out, that's like their limit, so things can definitely change out there. So again, we showed the current temperatures, but I can definitely show them again in this real-time analysis here. And this does cover a large area. So we do have Michigan largely in the 80s right now, Omaha upper 80s, and we have some 90s across Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky. And again, this is just like the start of it. So this is going to be something that we got to keep an eye out here for and watch very, very closely for, of course, just more heat coming our way. And I'm not seeing comments coming on Facebook or anything yet. Lots of TikTok, so yeah. And again, just starting. People are already commenting. It's only the 80s. It's just starting. We're going. So here we go. All right, let's pull up the European model. It has a good accuracy rating, and I will say we got to take all this with a grain of salt sometimes, because even the accurate models can have little biases. They lean warmer, lean cooler. They don't pick up on certain atmospheric effects, things like that. So I'll be explaining as best as I can as we go forward here, but we're going to start with max temperatures, and we're going to put a forecast loop on it here, and hopefully you can see these names of these cities okay. And let's see. And yes, there is severe weather going on to the west. I will cover that here in just a moment. So we're going to cover heat, severe storms. It's kind of like this ring of fire pattern, if you've ever heard of that, and storms typically ride over the heat dome, and that could clip parts of Michigan, like the Upper Peninsula. So here's what we're looking at in terms of today. For the rest of the afternoon, Grand Rapids could go up near 90. You just see a lot of upper 80s near 90. So that's not really bad. And honestly, like, the humidity is not really here yet, to be totally honest. I can flip it over to dew point. And I measure humidity and dew point. I don't do that percentage stuff because it changes based on nighttime, daytime, and I just think it confuses everyone more than it helps out. But here's a look at the dew points, and as you can see, dew points generally 50s, maybe borderline 60 in some cases today, but they will go much higher. So here's the humidity kind of streaming in overnight. And you can see here, by the way, where it says 2M AGL dew point, first of all, that stands for 2 meters above ground level. So that's about the height of, you know, a little bit taller than a human. You know, we're talking 7-8 feet up in the air. But look at these dew points. When they start showing that purple contour with the 70s, that is very humid, especially for the state of Michigan. And it's just going to stay very humid for quite a while. And that's why this is so dangerous, because humidity doesn't let us cool off at night. If you think about a desert, you know, it's hot, dry heat, but it gets cooler at night, right? Because there's no moisture. When there's moisture, it traps a lot of the heat, and then we stay hot through the overnight hours. So that's a main concern. It's not so much that it's going to be 97 degrees in the day, and while that's bad, it's just that we're not going to get relief, and the human body can't cool off, and then it gets really, really stressed out. So you can see under 2M AGL dew point, that's where the date and time is. So we're looking at 5 p.m. Tuesday now, and we still have a lot of humidity in place. And sure, it bounces around a little bit, but I mean, we're just going in and out of these purple areas, and the dew point's near 70, that's going to be a lot. By the time we get into Thursday, you see it starts a little bit drier with some more humidity to the north. That could actually help bump those temperatures an extra couple of degrees, having a slightly drier air mass in place. Humidity does keep us down from the extreme temperatures, but then you have to develop the heat index, and that number can be extremely high. And I do want to say right now, the heat index is for the shade. So when you're out in your backyard and you're under a tree and there's a heat index of 102, that is for the shade. If you're out in the sun, you can add 25, sometimes 30 degrees for that. So the heat index in all reality for the sun on your driveway or walking down a sidewalk in the sun could be as high as 125 or 130, and that's another reason why it is so dangerous out here. So notice I'll keep scrolling here. The humidity is just it's gonna stay very high until it gets a little bit drier, hopefully by the time we get into next week with a cool down coming. And that's a big if. Like I said, we're pretty far away from that, and that can change. So here's the actual air temperatures, but remember, it'll feel different with the heat index. So we can go forward into, this is going to be for Monday now. And you can see Monday we are going to have high temperatures generally in the lower 90s. And again, that actual air temperature for this time of the year, that is pretty warm out there. Definitely not unheard of at all. It was pretty hot last year at this time too, but it was a much drier heat. It's the humidity that's really going to be causing an issue for us. And until you feel that humidity tomorrow, you might be calling a little bit of BS on me right now, thinking it doesn't feel that bad out there. And that's fair, but just remember, humidity is going to make it feel a lot different. So now as we go into Wednesday overnight here, we'll go into Wednesday itself right here. Another day in the lower 90s. And some of us will get a little bit of relief from some thunderstorms developing. So just keep that in mind too. And I'll be showing you how that impacts the heat and the heat index here in just a moment. So we got lots of warm air coming our way. Even into Thursday and Friday, you can see middle to upper 90s. This is borderline 100 for some of us. And depending on the humidity is really going to determine who might have a crack at 100 and who might not. It takes a lot more energy to warm up water. If you think about, you know, I guess if you just think about being outside on a dry day, you know, it gets hot very quickly. Saunas get hot very quickly. You know, a sauna can be with dry heat like in the 160, 180 range, while steam room is like, what, 120 or something, because the humidity makes it so much worse to deal with. Little comparison for you. And also, just the amount of energy to warm up 97 and very humid degrees is a lot more energy, and I'm just not thinking we're going to crack 100 with the humidity. And then you can see it does hopefully cool off a little bit by the time we get into the weekend there. So lots of heat potential coming our way. Let's see if live preview, I don't know what TikTok's doing. We'll just minimize that. Let's see if I put the right image in here. Maybe we can start. Okay, yeah. So let's do this. Image slideshow. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so it's not as confusing. Okay, but this is something that I was hoping to show you also, because see that kind of circle of much colder air? That's indicating the possibility for some thunderstorms developing, not only a little bit Monday afternoon, but into Tuesday afternoon as well. And anywhere that gets a little bit of a thunderstorm, the cold air is going to fall out of that storm. It hits the ground and spreads out. So you're literally seeing the circle on the screen there of the thunderstorm, cold air coming out of the storm. So we might have that as a little bit of relief. That would be super cool, but maybe not. Also, whoops, I made this one too big. Let's shrink this down a little bit. I'm also a little concerned about areas that are right on the lakeshore, and this also translates down into part of Wayne County and Monroe County in Detroit, and especially Wayne County and anywhere like in inner city Detroit where we do have vulnerable populations. Unfortunately, we could be adding more moisture to the air. And notice this is the heat index, and this is at midnight. I chose this screenshot. So the Saginaw Bay, Lake Erie, and Lake St. Clair could be putting more water into the atmosphere, keeping it warmer further into the night. And again, we could have heat index readings in the upper 80s still at midnight, and that's why this heat wave is so dangerous. And again, especially for more vulnerable populations, socioeconomic issues, things like that. So there's a whole lot that goes into heat and vulnerable populations, the human body, people's health, things like that. So we're kind of, crossing here a lot with health-related impacts and weather, and it seems a little confusing. It's not the same as if it's going to rain out, because that usually doesn't impact anyone's health, but the heat stresses the human body a lot. And this is when we're going to be working very closely with health officials, because this is dangerous to people's health out there. And let's see, I think I have another one in here. Let's see. So this is the 7-day forecast that I issued, and honestly, it's looking pretty good from when I made it yesterday. So we have lots of 90s, and this is for basically the southern half of the Lower Peninsula. So if you have your hand here, cut it in half. That's the part of Michigan this is forecasting for. And I do have the possibility for those not severe thunderstorms, but they could be severe if there's windy enough. But thunderstorm development Monday and Tuesday, high temperatures, lower to middle 90s. And then you see the bright pink, which is the heat index, which is how hot it will feel when you factor in the humidity. Now, the good thing is we do have a little bit of a breeze out there. This would be a lot worse if there was no wind. So some days the wind could be 15, maybe 20 miles per hour, and that will certainly help out a little bit, keeping the heat index down. Because if we didn't have wind, the heat index might be as high as like, maybe 105, 110. So it's good that we have a little bit of wind to help us out. Otherwise, lots of sunshine out there. So it's the whole spiel of wear light clothing. If you eat lower calorie foods, that should help keep your body temperature down. Stay hydrated. When you feel the thirst coming on, that actually means that you are already dehydrated. So definitely something to keep in mind there. Let's see. I think I do have radar scope here to show you a couple of those storms that are floating around outside. Yep, okay, popped up for the Facebook users. Awesome. Oops. And yes, some folks were saying severe thunderstorm watch for Chicago. That is right there. I can pull up Iowa's radar for you. Just got to scroll in and find it. Oops, I think I passed it. Okay, Quad Cities. There you go. And we're getting wind gust reports coming through. So let's see if we click on this one. Maybe not. 54 miles per hour. Severe limits are 60 miles per hour. So we did have a 60 mile per hour wind gust, and that was sent in by a National Weather Service employee in Davenport, Iowa. So we will watch out for some strong winds into the Chicago area, as well as just south of Milwaukee, and that includes Kenosha, Waukegan, Gary, Indiana. Now, in terms of Michigan over here, I will have to go to my favorites, Grand Rapids radar, perfect. And we got a couple little thunderstorms popping up in northern Kent County, and that might actually hold the temperatures down just a little bit. So this is Grand Rapids, Michigan. You can see over towards Cedar Springs, we got a little bit of a storm, but these are generally moving off to the northeast, I believe. So these are going to, yeah, so see how they're moving pretty quickly off to the north and the east. This isn't going to impact Grand Rapids hardly at all. In fact, this one looks like it's going to Cedar Springs, but it's actually probably going more toward Howard City. So those areas will be fortunate and stay a little bit cooler throughout this Father's Day. Otherwise, off to the north, just got some light rain coming on through, but we will be watching each and every day for storm development, like I was saying. So we'll watch all that as well. Let me go to see if there's many comments coming in. I can look at water temperatures, actually. My computer's going a little slow. All these lives bog it down a little bit, but let's go into it here. And I will switch you over in just a second, Facebook. There we go. So this is the Great Lakes Environmental Research Laboratory. We can click on Michigan Huron, because remember, they are technically one lake, since they are connected. And let's take a look at water temperatures. These are in Celsius. Let's see, this was the 14th. I think that was yesterday. Oh, that was 2 days ago. It's already the 16th, man. Oops. Maybe this is what I want. Okay, so basically, this is snapshotting this afternoon. So the Saginaw Bay, we're about 20 degrees Celsius, maybe some areas popping up to 22, 18 to 20 degrees Celsius for southern Lake Michigan. And these will warm up a lot more. So the water is cold right now. It is pretty cold. Let's see, I know 26 degrees Celsius is 79, so minus like 12. Water temperatures are in the 60s. That's cold. That's like river water up north, if you felt that, up north in Michigan. So assuming Fahrenheit, yeah, I think 20 is in the mid 60s. Yeah, 68. So okay, it's warming up a little bit, but it's cold. It's going to be refreshing, to say the least. And these are going to warm up pretty substantially. I don't think this is going to go necessarily as far as ahead as I want it. Like literally 2 days ahead, it looks like. But in those 2 days, with the winds that we're expecting and the warmer air and the hot air, you can see the Saginaw Bay is already warming up like 2 to 4 degrees Celsius. So now we're getting well into the 20s. What you see, these little cold spots, by the way, for the western side of Lake Michigan and the western part of Lake Huron, that's what we call upwelling. So we're going to have a pretty stiff wind out of the southwest. Remember I said it was going to be breezy? That literally pushes the warm water to the east side of the lake. And then you get the really cold water coming up from the bottom. So during this heat wave, the water is going to be like ice cold in Chicago, Milwaukee, anywhere over on the Wisconsin side. I know maybe a lot of people from Detroit thinking about going up to Lexington or the Thumb. You'll want to be on the west side of the Thumb. So we're talking like Caseville, Sandpoint, Sebewaing, anywhere in the Saginaw Bay, because you'll have upwelling on the eastern side of the Thumb and the eastern part of the Lower Peninsula as well. I can also look at different lakes, by the way. Erie. I don't know if I can pull up Lake St. Clair, and I'm not sure if that's in here. Lake Erie is going to warm up. I know they just issued something about the really early algae bloom that everyone's expecting now because of this heat. And Lake Erie is a shallow lake, and there's a lot of like farm runoff that goes into it. So look how warm Western Lake Erie is getting. 24, maybe up to 26 C's. So we're talking, middle to upper 70s for water temperature already. That's going to really warm it up. I mean, we're talking like really early season warmth for these Great Lakes. And let's see. I can also pull up a graph, and the graph is really cool to look at because it kind of keeps a record of how this has all been going down. Unfortunately, I think my computer is got a lot of tabs and a lot of streaming services open. Hello from Coleman. Good to see you, Heather. On your way to Warren Dunes. Oh, that would be so nice right now. That would be nice. Okay, so Lake Michigan, we'll pull up the graph here. And I posted this for my subscribers, so if you subscribe to my Facebook page, which is a little over $2 a month, I post a lot of really in-depth information and analysis like this. Very, hopefully good value for everyone. But notice how the water temperature, which is the orange line that we're looking at, right here, was basically record for a while or close to it through most of the spring, which makes sense because we had like a lack of winter. And it kind of leveled off and went closer to average here because the temperatures haven't been that warm at all, really. So now we're already seeing a pretty good spike in those temperatures because we not only have the longest days of the year, more sunlight gets absorbed by the water. But if you look at the lakes from outer space, they're pretty dark in color, right? They're like dark, dark blue. Well, that absorbs a lot of heat. Just like if you wear a black shirt, it feels a lot hotter than a white shirt. So that absorbs a lot of heat. And look at, we're seeing a spike of already like 2 degrees Celsius, which is like 4 degrees Fahrenheit-ish. Yeah, maybe a little bit more than that, right? Something like that. And so anyway, I think this is going to spike up probably into the record territory or close to some of these years. And then we'll see what happens for the rest of the summer if we keep it very warm. And remember, last year we were warm into the fall, and that translated into some pretty crazy early season lake effect snow. So there's this other thing called the wet bulb, and this is focusing on the Detroit metro a little bit. This would also be relevant in bigger cities like Chicago too. So the wet bulb is like the temperature it feels like when the water, the sweat is evaporating off your body. And when it gets into the upper 80s, it just gets really hard for your body to cool itself. So this is a look at the maximum wet bulb temperature. And again, that's the, like, when you get out of the shower and it's like really cold because the water is evaporating. And then a hot, humid summer day, you get out of the water and you don't feel anything because it's really humid. The water's not evaporating as fast and you don't feel as cold. So wet bulbs in the middle to upper 80s are, quite stressful for the human body. And down here, we can see that. I want to check and make sure I got Facebook going. Yeah, I do. Okay. So this graph here, you can see that we will be in the 85 to 88 range, and it says working or exercising in direct sunlight will stress your body after 30 minutes. Precautionary actions you can take, and I know a lot of people's bosses might not be into this if you work outdoors, but it is very important that we try to do this if possible. Take at least a 30-minute break each hour if you're doing anything strenuous outside, especially in the direct sunlight. So that's literally like a 50-50 work, take a break, work, take a break. And it's just very important because, again, we're getting into like the dangerous category here of heat. We also have the Storm Prediction Center outlooks. This is for today. So notice we have a slight risk over Chicago and a slight risk for the Western UP. The Western UP does have the possibility to have round after round after round of storms come its way. So we'll be watching out for severe weather on top of all this heat that we're tracking. But back over to some heat things, I just want to show you So basically, it's just, kind of common sense. People that are at higher risk, children, pregnant, older adults, even younger children, obviously, as well. I just said that. But it's just important to keep all this in mind. Heat exhaustion and heat stroke, this is when you're just feeling dizzy, you're sweating a lot, nauseated, you're very weak. So it is important to get into a cold area, get very hydrated as fast as you can. And then, God forbid anyone passes out, that's when you call 911 and medical attention is needed. I know a lot of folks work out in the heat, so here's a good suggestion for everyone. Drink a cup of cold water every 20 minutes, even if you're not thirsty. Like I said, when that thirst mechanism triggers, you're already dehydrated. So it's important to really keep up on that. Go for the sports drinks with electrolytes. That would really help you out as well. Take regular breaks to rest. Skipping breaks is just really not safe. It's really not. Take breaks in the shade, and then just look for any signs that you might be having heat stroke or something like that. And like I said, I've mentioned vulnerable populations several times, so we're looking for individuals who are pregnant, newborns, young children, elderly, or anyone with chronic illnesses. Obviously, don't leave anyone in a car. Even with the windows down, pets and children in the car should not be happening at all when it's hot outside, period, at all whatsoever. Loose fit, light colored clothing, make sure you get a lot of ventilation and things like that. I can switch back over to radar scope. Again, I know we have a severe thunderstorm watch over toward the Chicago area. And that would be for storms that could be producing 60-mile-per-hour winds. So I can click across parts of Illinois. So yeah, we're looking at 60-mile-per-hour winds. And again, those storms would be headed toward the Chicago area. I wonder if I can just search Davenport. No. Nope. Okay. I'll scroll down to Iowa again. KDVN, that's what I have to remember. All right, so you see those storms. Here's some really cool stuff. We might have to talk about this for a minute. This is super cool. All right. So this looks like a nuclear bomb went off, right? You see like the mushroom cloud effect there. I think I got to switch the Facebook peeps over. Come on. There. Okay. So you see that kind of green, bluish ring around the storms that's just going out like crazy, like it's Independence Day or something? That is called an outflow boundary. So this is going to be something that we will probably see a lot while it's hot out. Like I said earlier, if you've been watching for a while, you get the cold air from the thunderstorms. It rushes to the ground, it slams into the ground, and it rushes out. If you've ever seen like the cloud come out of your freezer when you open the door, it hits the ground and it rushes out. Or if anyone's like set off a fire extinguisher or something like that, same thing. So what you're seeing is literally the cold air rushing out ahead of the storms. So for anyone that's along this boundary here that's racing out of the storms, you're going to notice a gust of wind, and then it gets much, much cooler before the storms come out. But also this boundary can trigger new storms to develop, because what it does is that cold air just rushes out. And what happens when cold air rushes into hot air? It pushes the hot air up and over it, right? That's how you get some more storms to develop. So this is really cool that you can see it so just, wow, it's crystal clear on this radar image. So that's really neat to see. And again, it can trigger more storm development, and it means a lot of very strong wind is coming out as well. So not only do you have hot and cold air, right? So we know about hot air wants to rise, cold air wants to sink, but also when you add a lot of water vapor into there, the humidity, that weighs even less. So hot, humid air is a lot less dense than hot, dry air. And then you get the cold air from higher up in the storm, and the buoyancy is just that much greater. So it really wants to switch, and there's just a lot more energy for that to happen. So you get stronger winds, and that's how that kind of goes there. Let me look at some comments over here because I'm not sure if I'm seeing everything come in Facebook or not. Yeah, I think everyone's busy this afternoon. There's just not many people watching at all. So yes, please be careful during the heat. I can go back over to this really quick. And again, just be careful during the heat, everyone. Upper 90s might not sound like it's that bad, but a lot of humidity and those overnight lows in the upper 70s are pretty insane. So please be careful the next several days. I will be doing a lot more lives just to chat with you all and show you the models, probably just posting some weather forecast videos as well. And again, if you want to subscribe to my Facebook, it's a little over $2 a month, and you're going to get a lot more 7-day forecasts like this. You're going to get a lot more in-depth weather analysis, so not just like, oh, there's severe weather. I'm actually going to show you the mechanics of how that severe weather works, and just a lot more fun and interesting things. I posted on there about summer temperatures across the continental United States warming, except in the middle of the country, and I explained why that was, and I showed a very interesting answer that I'm not sure a lot of people thought about, so that's on there if you subscribe. So yeah, keep an eye out for all of that. Otherwise, thanks for joining, and I will be on